Well, hey everyone, I'm Dee Lanier and here with Matt Miller and Dr. Micah Shippee and Dr. Monica Burns. It's so good to have you all here. And we're here to talk about interactive whiteboards, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What's their place in the classroom? And we started with, I should say, some of us started with blackboards, right? You remember chalk to whiteboards. You remember all the ink and all of that, to now we have interactive displays. And it's really a pressing question. What's their place? Like, why are we using them? Are we just rehashing like old traditional teaching by having interactive boards at the front, or can we do something different? All right, so interactive whiteboards, we're always thinking about how teachers are in the front of the room, they're doing the instructing, students are there to take notes, pay attention, but interactive whiteboards, how do we change that narrative, and how do we change the culture of the classroom? How do we make it to where students are actually collaborating together, collaborating with the teacher, maybe even taking some of the reins of the learning, right? So how can interactive displays actually change the classroom?
Well, I think one of the things that I love about having an interactive whiteboard, an interactive display in the classroom, is that it's vibrant, it's colorful. You know, like you put a map, you put an image, you put some sort of interactive content up there, especially when it comes to geography, and like you can take students there. You know, it makes them feel like they're actually there. Those virtual field trips, even when you pair it together, you know, with like a video conference, bring virtual guest speakers into the classroom, when it's on that great big display and the color is just right and everything, like, you know, students communicating with a virtual guest someplace else, communicating with another class of students in another city or another country even, like, I mean, all of a sudden they start to feel like they're really there. You know, brings in that collaboration piece, but then, you know, when you get that vibrant color just right, it really sort of immerses them, makes them feel like they're in that spot.
I think back to my time as a classroom teacher with an overhead projector. The lights were turned off, hoping I got everything right on the transparency and that nobody was too zoned out. And now we have an opportunity to really bring students into the modeling process a little bit more crisply, right? Talk about what they're learning together and have that one area of focus that everyone can really get their, you know, wrap their head around what's happening within the content of a classroom.
So Monica, you took us on a virtual field trip, what Matt was talking about, and you reminded us of transparencies as well, right? I mean, goodness, which is interesting when you think about it. All of these things were technology, but now we are really venturing into new space, and the whole idea of these displays being interactive. I'm always asking the question, interactive for who? Is it just the teacher who's up in the front and moving things and annotating, or are we really providing opportunities for the students to also do that? It's the center of attention. It's this large, vibrant screen. How do we put student work up there, casting it, or with certain technology, even able to have, you know, two-way touch? So whether I'm on this tablet or this Chromebook and I'm doing things and it's up there, what if the student actually takes center control and has that touch capability and has that dragging capability, has that annotating capability, right? Like, that's really empowering your learners. And for other students to recognize, my turn might be next where I can be at the front of the room, right?
I really think when we talk about interactive and the front of the classroom being a focus for learners, there's a powerful use case of several hundred years of having the front of room be a place where summaries take place and introductions take place and setting purpose and objectives takes place. But when we want to provide students the opportunity to share their work to the front of the room, we have to remember that for some students that's a very uncomfortable thing. Not every child is an extrovert.
Right.
Sometimes teachers are, but not every kid is. So we need to think about how can we help students share their work in a way that makes them feel safe, that gives them a safety net, if you will, but also provides an opportunity for students who are ready to move forward. So with casting technology, which I believe is very powerful in education, we have the capability to allow students from anywhere in a classroom to send what they've created to the front of the room for other students to see. They can provide a narrative about their work from their seat. The teacher can interject and perhaps add guiding questions to what the student is speaking about. But also with bidirectional casting, which exists, Students can cast to the front of the room, go to the front of the room, leave their device at their desk, how cool is that, and start dragging and dropping and moving in the front of the classroom. And so that bidirectional casting is something that I think is the future of these technologies in bringing students from their seat to the front of the room.
So as we're trying to create interactive classrooms and utilizing interactive displays, I'm curious, how does an interactive display actually help in that regard?
Well, that's one of the carryovers from strategies that our teaching ancestors have taught us, that front of classroom has a place for helping students sync up with setting a purpose for the day, setting a purpose for a lesson, providing a mid-lesson summary, and then more guidance in the classroom. And so a front of classroom, a physical position, benefits cognitive retention. So if students are used to you being in one spot as a teacher giving direction, it's part of your classroom management. When you go back to that spot, even without saying, okay, class, I'm going to give more direction, they understand that that's the place in the room where they receive guidance in class discussion. The front of class has a long-standing tradition, and I think that that long-standing tradition shouldn't just be set aside because we have new technology, because that technology is actually amplifying good practice.
You know, students are creatures of habit, right? Like, we're all creatures of habit. And so if they get used to seeing this is the spot where something happens, it kind of like clicks in their brain, right? So like what you were saying. So when they have that spot to kind of like anchor on that and they know what's coming next, there's a little bit of that sense of security, you know, like that sense of comfort in knowing what's going to come next, kind of like almost reduces anxiety a little bit, I think.
I found that in my classroom where when I would list my outline of objectives in the front of the classroom, students would feel a lot more comfortable about what was coming. And if there was ever a day where I was in a hurry or something and I forgot to list my order of events for the day, they would remind me, like, what's going to happen next. And that just shows us that creatures of habit that we are, and that routine really benefits our classroom practice.
Yeah, no surprises that way, right?
Yes.
And so I heard you both really talking about the security from being at the front. I'm curious, Monica, what are some of your thoughts?
Having that established space in the room where students can refer back to for that extra help, that support, it really helps them with the independent practice to remind them where they're headed and what extra resources are available for them, as well as when working in small groups when they need to adjust or remember exactly what it is that they're working on together.
I have to, just highlight something. We're all implying something in the ways in which we're talking about an interactive whiteboard being in a classroom. It's not just the teacher standing and talking for 20, 30 minutes. It's around establishing what's going to happen, making sure rules are set, there's an understanding of what's happening here, a reminder of things, and then allowing the students to go back to collaborate, to work together, to accomplish goals. It's pretty cool.
It's still like one piece of the puzzle, right? Like, it's all different parts, and then that anchored spot at the front is just one part of it. It's not the whole thing. It's not the main focus. It's just another piece, right?
Yeah.
So as a former social studies teacher, documentaries were a personal favorite of mine. I know my students weren't always as engaged in the videos as I was, but what I did find is whenever I would use subtitling in my video, it would increase student vocabulary retention. Mm-hmm. And so when we have a really nice bright display where I can leave the lights on, lights on, brains on, I used to say, right? Leave the lights on, have the subtitling very clear, very bright. It's like I have a teacher aide in the classroom, reinforcing vocabulary in the front of the room when I'm in the back with my remote to pause and add my anecdotes.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're pulling small groups during some of that instructional time, to have something clear and crisp that everyone can view and refer back to, you can really be in a few different places at once.
You mentioned something about the subtitles in the documentary, and that's one of those powerful things that helps all of the students. I mean, you even said that it improves vocabulary retention, and it's not, having subtitles isn't just something we need to put in as an accessibility feature for students who have it in their plans that they have to have it. That's one of those things that everybody benefits from. That's one of those tools where everybody's starting to use it more and it helps everybody remember.
I found that some of these documentaries that I would share had amazing maps and amazing visuals.
Yep.
And being able to pause it and annotate right over the top of it is just another powerful use of the interactive technology. Yeah.
And some of those opportunities that come up that are completely unscripted, right? A student asks a question or makes a comment, and the next thing you know, you're having a teaching moment right there. So sometimes it's planned to pause the video and to talk about a certain thing, and then sometimes someone asks a question because we've created an interactive environment, right?
Yeah.
And they ask a question, and the next thing you know, oh, we're teaching now, right? Like we are having dialogue, and we can annotate on top of, we can scrub back, show that part, make an arrow. Like that's where I feel like teaching really becomes dynamic for that entire class. And that's something that you can't script, right?
It really sets you up for success for a teachable moment.
And you don't have to turn the lights on, shock everybody.
I like to have the lights on though.
I was just saying, like back in the TV cart days, right?
Yeah.
The TV cart comes in with the VCR. It's like, oh, nap time.
Yeah.
So the lights are gonna go out.
How excited were you when the TV cart rolled into the room?
Yeah,
Because it was nap
exactly.
time. So Monica, earlier you mentioned something around modeling instruction. I'm curious, how do interactive displays help in that regard?
Well, it really opens up the world of possibilities for how to show a strategy or to introduce a piece of text or break down a big idea for a group of students. You have this opportunity to unpack something, to break down all the parts. Students can watch your thought process as you're thinking aloud, as you're modeling, and of course you can bring students into that modeling opportunity too, having them come to a place where their classmates can watch as they are thinking through a process and learn from that experience too.
All right, so we've gone back in time. We've talked about the blackboards, the whiteboards. We had reminders of transparencies, the cart that comes into the classroom. I don't know about any of you, if you had actually like the TV mounted in the room, right? And now here we are with this really beautiful technology, this vibrant, the opportunity to bring in good teaching and learning strategies with it in the room being present. Really, in many ways, it sounds like this is opportunity for us to blend some of the traditional with some of what we know to be good instructional design. So with that, there's always a question of what's next and how else will this tech be used in more meaningful ways? And so thank you for this part of this conversation, and let it be continued.